Hi, I am Bridgette. Thank you so much for taking a second to get to know me and the work that I do. I hope you love what you see. Today, I'd like to share with you a video content portal that I worked on while I was at Charter Spectrum. I started there as a producer, and after about a year and a half of working with the internal agencies team as both a producer and later a UI designer, I was pulled in to work on this video and audio and static image upload portal, which was just a great experience. And I want to walk you through what I did, what we built, and some of the challenges that happened along the way. So, the target for this project was hotels and universities who needed to upload videos to put on public display communications boards, TVs, monitors, things like that. And so, like, think of when you go to a hotel and behind the check in counter, there's a screen on the wall and it's showing things like featured restaurant menu items for the season, any sort of band or happy hour maybe that they have going on at the hotel. Or when you go to an educational building, they often have, particularly if you go to like student centers, they'll have a screen where events and clubs you can join and maybe important like deadlines, stuff like that, is running constantly on a screen. That is literally all that screen plays is communication messages. And in this project, we were building a way to make this an easier to manage thing. So, what we were making, an AWS powered portal, it's a standalone add on for our customers, for our enterprise customers who already had a service related to this. And that's why we had this specific niche of shopping centers, commercial buildings, that have different small businesses inside of them, hotels, which have conferences, and they always have some sort of displays showing what's going on, where people need to be, stuff like that. We had a service where these enterprise level clients were already interacting with us and wanted to add a new revenue stream to our offerings for them. And so I was brought in after the decision of what we're making, just the what was decided. And I got briefed on the details of, or the overview of, here's what we're trying to do. And I'm a really big person that on when it comes to organization, I'm really big on getting it all clear, because sometimes people will say things and it doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. And so, after a few meetings of me getting caught up on what are we talking about, what are we trying to build, I put together just this initial look of what I'd heard, basically, and some of the questions that had come up that they had already discussed, and some of the questions that I had in my mind about what we needed to do, what we need to build, and how to make this make the most sense. And yeah, so I put together this mostly just for myself, but I did share with the team, of course, and and they loved the clarity, and it actually sparked a lot of other conversations for us to consider. Our mission, and I chose to accept it: build a content upload portal. The portal was to function as a tool that customers were going to use over and over again, and it would be one of the few tools available at their fingertips that had the sole purpose of being a way, giving them a way to immediately communicate with customers. And that was kind of the biggest value that I kept trying to bring to the forefront as we were building this, because communication is the most important thing for their retention of customers and our retention of them. One of the biggest features that I pitched was including the ability to schedule a time and date for the video. And one of the businesses' top priorities was to make sure that they could stream in multiple locations. So, like in the hotel example, when you go to the front desk, you've got certain things you want to play there. But if there's a conference going on and you want to display content specifically for that group, you need to be able to stream something separate in that location. One of the kind of along the same lines of the streaming locations, I think we called them feeds in the actual build, different places that you could run your feed to, basically. The stipulation that you could only upload a single file per feed was very important. It was something that we talked about trying to find a way around, but the issue was that it complicated things too much on the user side, and it made too much of an opportunity for them to accidentally run something that they didn't mean to. And one of the aspects of this build was that as soon as you upload the file, it immediately plays. And so we needed to minimize any post upload issues and making it so that there was only one file per feed was the best way to do that. So it's not a huge deal. And the other features definitely still make this worth. Two other things that were very important for this bill were minding the requirements for upload file sizes and making sure that in use the user knew that their file was uploading, because videos, for example, would be the thing that most people would use this for, and it would take a little longer for a video to upload than like a static image. So I'm going to go into more in a little bit about how we made sure that that potential issue was not an issue. And then the other thing that we needed to pay special attention to was an internal login database differentiation, and I'll get more into the details of that in just a minute. But first, let me give you a little preview of where we landed so you know where we're heading. So this is a quick high-level view of the content upload portal's beta release. You've got your drag and drop upload box. You have your channel view location drop down. Oh yes, channels, not feeds. It was channels. You have your channel view drop down selection options here. And this is just one of the this is just one of the screens that show the different stages that the user would go through and outlines exactly what engineering needed to create in order to be in line with the product's design requirements. And this one, super important. This was the chance for the user to make sure that they had the desired file name here and it was going to the correct location, and just confirm that everything was in place before clicking before it goes live, because as soon as they click confirm, the video starts playing immediately in their selected channel. One of the things we discussed doing in the next iteration was making it so there was a little preview window as a part of this confirmation screen that lets you see your video here in this screen before clicking confirm. And that was something we felt would become a really useful addition in the next iteration of this tool. Okay, so I like to always start with learning more. Then I organize my information, kind of like what I showed you in my initial kind of thought process as I was putting things together. After I get more information, I organize, I plan my strategy, I get feedback from my mates, and then I like to visually outline a plan so that I can clearly see it for myself, where we're heading. And usually I find a couple of gaps, which is kind of why I do it this way. And then also I use my whatever I use, whatever way I put things together for me to see it, I use those same materials to present to everyone else so that I know that we're all looking at the same thing, thinking in the same way, and planning on the same outcomes. So before we began bringing in other team members, I needed to have it really clear in my mind what exactly we were doing. That is where this design brief came from. I wanted to make sure that I had the right thoughts and that I had the right intent and that I had approval from everyone who'd already been discussing this, and that I had also included any engineering potential issues that they had already discussed and others that I came up with as we were talking about this later. I planned out the flow. Let me give you a closer look at that because it really helped as I was, kind of onboarding, I guess is the best way to say it, onboarding to this build. It helped me to be able to see each of the sections of how this was going to work. And it turns out that the building of the actual portal was the simplest, most straightforward part. The entry became like the client actually getting into the portal, and then the admins were the two areas where we needed to tread extra attentively, and everything else just really flowed like butter. Let me explain a little bit about what I mean by that. Oh, I forgot to say that this is what I meant by when I said I like to visually outline the plan. This is what I meant. And so when I start bringing in other people from UX research, from content, from the design team, from the engineering team, I can show them these things and walk them through what we're doing so that they can be onboarded with more clarity than I was. That's usually why I do it this way because when I show up, the idea is still being formulated, and it makes it really hard for other people who aren't naturally dot filler inners to join something that is not quite pulled together yet. But when you give them something like this and then you say, hey, this is the portal entry point, we're going to have this landing page screen here, the customers are going to need to log in, and we're going to have our SSO log in here as well, and we've got a team working on that now, and you can walk them through. And then this is our other section, we've only got 5 parts to this baby, and I'm able to be really clear about what we're doing in each step. People love it. And I know that I started leading projects this way because it's how I always wished other people did it for me. And and it works really well, and I think my teams have always felt empowered by the clarity, and they people feel better when they know that they are doing what they need to be doing, what's expected of them, and that they are on track with the vision. And that's what this does. So of course, we always start with discovery, finding out what's already out there, what the users need if possible. In this particular case, we actually could not bring in a dedicated researcher because it was not allocated in the budget. So my solution was to find effective upload patterns and see where they fell off. For example, most of the platforms like this had a multi-step process built in, and I was wondering why they were like that. Obviously, it was to make things more clear, but in addition to that, it was during a time where people were even less willing to sit through a process that they didn't know how long it was going to be. I'm sure you remember that time of design where if you made something that had steps to it, you needed to make sure that people knew how many steps there were. It became an obvious thing to build this as a multi-step system, especially when it was made clear that we would need to build this into the existing platform that these customers were already using as a part of our services to them. I mentioned a little bit earlier about this drag and drop. If you drag and drop something, as you know, if you drag and drop something and you can't really tell that it's uploading, you might click refresh. It was super important that people did not do that. And so I'll show you an upload, I will show you an upload animation that interacted with users to make sure that they knew that their upload was in progress. There were a few engineering things that we needed to pay close attention to, like the login client permissions thing that I mentioned earlier. What that was that basically that these customers were already customers and they were enterprise level customers, which means that they were part of a database that was different than our typical commercial and residential customers. The enterprise clients were a part of the same database as some of our contractors and employees. And we needed to make sure that we set permissions so that it separated who was who. Now, that was engineering's job, and it turns out they were already working on that for a different product. So, in this build, we didn't need to spend too much time on it. We just needed to build for the now solution and make sure that the UI and design specs were already set for the when they finish that planning situation as well, which I did. I already discussed the content file size limitation that we needed to design for, and obviously, we needed to consider the fact that our customers would be using different tools or different devices to log in. And that is where the decision to use the existing structure that the customers were already using and to build this into that came from. UI design considerations. There was one UI design consideration that was the biggest issue that I mentioned a second ago when I said that the portal entry, step number 1 and step number 5, were the biggest things, and this is part of step number 1. Just getting into the system turned out to be our heaviest lift. But overall, the most important features that made this a great product extension was our V2, where you'd be able to preview the video, like I mentioned earlier, the ability to assign to channels in the actual app, and that you could define admin roles within your organization as a client. You could define different people who could be super admins and editors, because maybe you wanted to assign this to like your social media director to be the person who uploads the videos. There were talks about how, well, what about people who left the company? And we needed to make sure that different people did not upload things that, say, the super admin user would not approve of. So we had to think about those types of things and build that into our solution. And then, due to the fact that once you upload a file, it is instantly uploaded, we wanted to add that blue, let me go back to it, that blue confirmation check here, just to make sure that you picked your right file intentionally and that it is going to the right place. So let's get into this step number 1, the portal entry that I said was the biggest thing. We did not get far past my creative brief and my cute little UX flowchart before we hit our first challenge. It turns out that this isn't exactly it, but it was very similar. I had to put just something together, to show what it was like before, so that I could explain it to you now. It turns out that the login screen for customers had actually not been redesigned in almost 12 years. And we were actually asked to go ahead and remedy this and therefore of course we needed to increase the scope of our work that we had planned and include redesigning this login for all sign in and registration corporate wide. I'll just quickly show you where we landed for specifically for the portal, and then I'll show you. Let's see. Yeah, I think I can find that. I'll show you the where how I laid out the corporate wide sign on as well. And since that's a public file, I'm able to show you what that looks like. So in the app itself, it there was an important conversation about how since this was an upload portal, it could not use any existing upload icons, and so we enlisted the work of the illustration team in our within our internal design agency to craft something custom. On the left, these are my not so well. These are my art direction notes, and my project manager had an idea of what he thought would be cool. He made this sketch for us, and after some iterations and discussion, we ended up going with this as a general style for the overall look of the illustration that would go on the sign in page. So the instructions were we needed to stay close to the general look that I showed a second ago, but upgrade it. And so this is what the decision was to go with. Okay, so we're going to upgrade these bits, and I don't remember why, but we had to keep both of the logos. Of course, that came up. I don't recall why, but it was a good reason. And so we I was to upgrade the overall look, and I wanted to make it into a framework so that the illustrations could be updated in the future, and we would eliminate this stale thing. So when I did this, illustrations were totally in style, and I'm sure you remember when everyone changed from photos to these sometimes clunky but very cool looking illustrations. So at that time, that we were in the age of illustrations. By making it into a framework, we'd be able to change this illustration as much as we wanted. And that was obviously going to be useful now and then and in the future. And this one was animated, of course. This is just kind of a still image of what the illustration team made, but they animated it and it was really cool. This is the sign in file in Figma. So we had the ESSO, the general registration, and sign up for first time users. And then we have an onboarding path that includes basically tooltips and stuff like that kind of walks people through the process and does any error handling that may be required. And just as a quick to kind of explain, if in case you don't know why there's so many of them, there's different there's different scenarios that every person may experience when they're going down the path for registration. And so, of course, we have to account for every single one of those. And in addition to accounting for those user scenarios, each of the screens also has one that's got spacers in it for the development team so that they can maintain consistency and they know exactly what every single screen should look like. Back to our portal. There were a few design decisions that needed to be made. Let me skip ahead just a little bit here to show you the shell because I think this is important. So this is when I said that we had to build inside of the existing enterprise platform. This is the this is I call it a shell, but this is what was already there. This is kind of a simplified version of what these enterprise customers were already working within. They have different menu options, of course. This is specifically for the platform, but this general layout is what they were accustomed to, and you'll see the upload portal is designed to fit into this space. So it makes a little more sense when you know that that's what we're doing here. So, for example, this was the MVP, just to get an idea of okay, what's everything that we gotta have in here somehow. And this screen or mock-up on the right is what I made just to show. This is before before things got moving, before we were asking questions. This is what we knew. This is the direction for where to go. The two biggest decisions that I'll touch on were the should we do a pop up versus a page takeover. Page takeover being using this space here to the right. And again, I already said that it was determined that we did need to go ahead and do it this way. But we considered doing a pop-up version like this where if you click ready to upload or whatever the call to action on the button would have been, you get a pop-up like this and like a modal, and the rest fades and you do everything within here. But since we needed to stick with using this pre-existing layout, it was best to go ahead and go with the full page takeover version. And then the other design decision that was super important to get in place was about what I mentioned in making sure that the upload in progress part was clear to the user. So the way I resolved that issue was enlisting the illustration team again to make first that custom upload icon. One of our team members pointed out that since this was a product, we needed to make sure that this icon didn't look like anything else, which was a great point. And so I came up with the idea to find a way to build a brand symbol with our icon and merging it somehow with the company logo or with the triangle that was already part of the logo and has been for a very long time. So you can see my art direction notes here. I clipped out some of the design references that I gave them because I found this one that myself and my creative director really liked. Hang on, it's playing both of them, but I mean the one here on the left. Let's see, it'll stop. Okay, it'll do it again. Let me do it again. All right, so this one on the left, I really liked the way it, you know, yeah, and so now the reverse part was a little too much, of course. So what I did was I gave them the video on the left as a sample, and the dedicated icon that the illustration team was working on was going to replace that. So we had a couple of different people from the team working on it, but one person was doing the animation, the other person was drawing the icon. But the icon had not yet been approved, and I didn't want the development team to accidentally put it in, but we needed to keep things going. So I told the animator to just use anything for now and try to make something similar to that. I put this preview thing over it because I didn't want it to accidentally get used. I couldn't find, as I was getting ready to do this today, I couldn't find one without it, but our animation ended up being like this, except you see the Spectrum logo triangle in the middle. We did. Oh, hang on. I'm trying to pause it. How do I pause? Hang on. Um, I wanted to use there and there. Okay. Oh, you can't quite see it. Well, I wanted to do the brand symbol thing like I mentioned, and so but we needed something to make it more clear. It came out more clear that it came from the Spectrum logo when okay, there we go. Now you can see it. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay. It came out more clearly that it was part of the Spectrum logo when the animator did the final, and I couldn't find it, but you get the idea of where it was going. That was a lot of problem solving, and things were after this so funny after getting people logged in everything was much easier. So getting people logged in and then making sure they knew not to click re-upload, like I said, those are the biggest things. The planning as far as the back end stuff goes, I worked very closely with our engineering and development teams to make sure that any issues that they saw were resolved. So, like I said about the showing, visually showing what we're doing, I made this to make sure that we just didn't miss anything. So, even though this login was the smallest thing that we had, it needed its own dedicated thing. But then by the time we finally get to the portal after logging in, this was just kind of an outline of what to do next and potential errors and just different things that I discussed with engineering to make sure that we had all of our bases covered. This is a look at the final, almost final. You see the blue square in the middle. That's for the the upload icon. I couldn't find the final, but I didn't want the wrong icon to be uploaded anywhere, and so I just didn't take any chances. So I just put a blue square there. I knew that no one was going to put anything into live production that had a blue square on it, but the engineering team could definitely go ahead and start building out the rest of the layouts. As far as the UI design goes, there were some elements that were already kind of set, due to the existing design system that we already had. But there were also a few components that had never been used before. So this is just a quick run through of kind of the same thing of me laying everything out and making sure that it's all clear and that we covered all of the potential use cases and scenarios. And this was a Figma file that I handed off. Yeah, uploaded it to Jira so they can more easily pull the code. And these are just all the messages and button styles that I used in building the mockups. Now that you've walked through it with me, it makes a little more sense what we're looking at. I hope now it makes sense of why we landed there and the great news. Some of the great news on this was that before we even finished production on the second release of this, we two of our partners that were already customers had actually signed up for this, one being a hotel and the other was a university, and we were able to kind of use them as testing grounds to make sure that things were working well. There were two issues that came up. One was that for some reason the when you had a super admin, if you assigned an editor, you could add an editor and you could assign it to a person on your team, but when that person logged in, it was not giving them access to the portal. There was an error message that would run every time, but of course Dev fixed that. And then oh, one of the features that I didn't mention, there's a user history log that's included so that you can track what your other team members have been uploading as the admin. And there was an adjustment in there where there was one piece of information that wasn't being pulled from the user's profile. I don't recall what it was, but they fixed that as well. And then looking forward into the product benefits of this offering, we were discussing how important it might become to be able to upload more than one video per feed, because maybe there are customers who don't have a marketing director or a marketing team that they can pull to delegate this additional tool to, or several reasons, but to find a way to securely, though, because the issue was security, to find a way to securely make it so that they can upload more than one video per feed was going to be something that we look into in the future. And then the original plan was to make sure that there's audio that can be streamed as a part of this service in the future. And I believe at launch, the users were able to schedule for 30 days. It's either 30 or 60 days, but whatever it was, we wanted to double it and make it longer. And then that login issue of enterprise customers having the same account as contractors and some employees. They, like I said, they were working on fixing that. And in the meantime, though, every enterprise client that was signing up for it would have to have their account manager contact. We had a special person designated to be the contact for getting to just basically tell them, hey, this client got the add-on, and then that person would get with our development team lead and make sure that they just turned on the switch that gave them the tabs for the portal. And that's it. Okay, so maybe it doesn't sound like just a little, but it turned out great, and I love working through these opportunities. I don't think of them as really being problems. They're chances to build something that people need and that people want, and none of us have anything better to do. So it's always really fun to work on stuff together, and I'd love for you to work on things with me.